Friends, this probably comes as no surprise, but I was a piece of work as a kid. Sometimes I feel pretty sorry for my family members and my parents, remembering all the habits and questions they were patient enough to put up with, and then they get me as a son, and so I make them sermon illustrations every week. One of them, though, one of my most interesting moments, was the time I interrogated my uncle about the devil. I grew up thinking about the devil as a kind of counter-god, a demigod, an antithesis to the real God. Something like the devil was on a par with God, and the world was the scene of a great cosmic battle between God's powers of good and the devil's powers of evil, somewhat like the light side and the dark side in Star Wars or something. And I've been taught in Sunday school that when we're tempted to do evil, it was the devil who did the tempting. And my 9 or 10-year-old mind thought I had caught Christianity in a pretty clever contradiction. I confronted my Uncle John about it. One time he was driving me somewhere. I honestly don't remember where. I can remember where it happened, but I can't remember where we were going or what we were doing. But I do remember the conversation, and I said to Uncle John, if God's really concerned about sin, then the person God really has a problem with is the devil, not me. If it wasn't for the devil, I wouldn't be tempted. And if it wasn't for my being tempted, I wouldn't have sinned. Ergo, it's not really my fault when I sin, but it's the devil who made me do it. Now, what would you, I wonder, say to a kid who presented you with that question? God bless my Uncle John. I think he patiently tried to explain to me, human beings are responsible for the choices they make and so on. But I wasn't buying it. The devil always confused me as a kid. It was the one part of the Christian puzzle I couldn't quite make fit with everything else. And even as a 9 or 10-year-old, I wanted everything to fit. I have to say, even today, I have some rather mixed feelings about the devil, a.k.a. Satan, a.k.a. the adversary, whatever it is you want to call him. I don't, strictly speaking, believe he exists, but I also don't think we ought to ignore him. Our second lesson today from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians makes pretty quick mention of the devil. In it, Paul enjoins us to put on the whole armor of God so that we may be able to stand against the wiles, or sometimes it's translated the schemes of the devil. And there are a few things that we ought to remember here right off. First is that the devil is one of a host of characters who make up the cast of the biblical mythology. Okay? And this cast includes not only the devil or Satan, but angels and archangels, like Gabriel. Remember Gabriel, the archangel who tells the Virgin Mary that she's going to be the mother of Jesus? Or the archangel Michael, who leads the armies of God in the book of Revelation, where it describes a kind of cosmic battle. Michael also makes an appearance in the book of Daniel, among other places. Satan is not an evil counterpart to God, as I imagined as a child, but if anything, he's kind of the counterpart to the archangel Michael in the story. He's not on the same level as God. He's like on the same level as Michael. And if all this sounds very strange, just keep in mind that Christians, like countless religious people throughout the history of the world, have a mythology. It's just that, as C.S. Lewis very cleverly put it, ours happens to be true. Now, the second thing that we should remember is that evil has a very curious sort of existence, if we can call it that at all. We talk about evil as if it exists very straightforwardly, like I exist. I think I exist. Yes, I do exist. Yes, okay, like I exist. Or the pulpit exists, or the pew on which you sit exists, but it doesn't. Okay? Evil is what theologians call a privation. It's a technical term that means something like a lack or a deficiency in something that does exist. Namely, it's a privation of the good. I know that sounds confusing, but it's really quite simple. Think about cold, okay? Cold doesn't actually exist. There's no such thing as cold. Rather, heat exists. And cold is the name we give to the condition of the lack of heat. Okay, the same goes for darkness. Darkness doesn't exist. Darkness is not a kind of stuff, right? Instead, darkness is the name we give to the condition of the absence of something that does exist. Light. Evil is the same way, or at least most theologians in the history of the tradition have thought, particularly St. Augustine of Hippo. Evil doesn't actually exist. Rather, good exists, and evil is the name we give to the condition of the absence of it.